Hope you're doing well. We're going to talk about rhythmic phrasing again, but I want to put this in a perspective that really helped one of my students. What we were getting into was very repetitive rhythm, but it was not interesting, but the pitches were repeating. Where if you're really going to get into sort of the language of improvisational guitar and phrasing, whether it's blues to Latin, whatever it is, you want to focus a little bit more on the rhythm and making it a little bit interesting. Now, it needs to be repeatable, but just having something that does da 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 is not interesting enough. Where if we take a little bit more of an interesting rhythm, da 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 da, now we're able to not only repeat that, but it kind of sticks in our ear a little bit more because it's not just a straight da 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 da. Just like, so boring. So anyway, the issue that we were sort of running into, and I think a lot of people run into this when we talk about the exercises of playing four of the same exact phrase, even if you're getting up into playing like, an A phrase, a B phrase, repeating the A phrase, repeat the B phrase, wherever it is along this sort of expression and exercise of repetition, what tends to happen is we rely a little bit too much on the pitch at first, and that defeats the purpose. And a clear example is if we take 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not really a repeated phrase. It's just a slew of notes that's repeated, if that kind of makes any sense. Even if I split it up. It doesn't have that much effectiveness. Now, it's a great first try. All of the pitches exactly the same. So now, if we take something that has a little bit more of an interesting pitch, ba ba da da ba 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 da 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 ba ba. So if I do, right, and the funny thing about that phrase is you actually hear the beginning isn't that interesting, right? But then it does get a little bit interesting, kind of moves to the upbeats there at the end, or if like you were going to add a triplet or something like that. So now, when I take that and I do, right now, what we have is, and even with that little bit of a variation, we have a set of 4 phrases that all play off of each other because we're morphing them from a little bit more of an interesting rhythm, right? Rather than, so I changed each one of those, as you guys could hear, rather than same exact notes played the same way, except I kind of flubbed the first one up, doesn't have the same impact. It doesn't have this like, ooh, there's this awesome, phrase that's like repeated 4 times. So then what we start getting into is let's see, so right? It's just not going to break up enough. Now, if we really make the first 4 have a little bit more of an interesting rhythm, right, and then move to another one that also has something a little bit more interesting. So if we do, right, now that's a set of 4 and a set of 4, all with variations of a little bit more of an interesting rhythm. Now you can really push that. I tried to keep that a little bit on the simpler side, you could really push those rhythms. You know, if you sit down and you think like da 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 da, right? It's got a little bit more syncopation. Right, that was an A-B based off of a rhythm that kind of stuck out a little bit more percussive. So just those varied changes makes it sound like the four phrases, you know, rather than now you can even hear if I start changing the rhythm and it doesn't have that catchiness. If it's just da 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 da, or I'm sorry, if I change the pitches with that. Now it doesn't really sound much like four repeating phrases at all. It just sort of sounds like rambling. And this is where we almost get into that idea of like, all right, play something. It's like, wow, that's not going anywhere because it's just this shotgun of notes. I want you guys to see if you can come up with some cooler rhythms, really getting on some of the upbeats. Bop bop ba da, bop bop ba 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 da, bop bop ba 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 da. Be surprised at how more interesting a rhythm can sound by starting on the and of one rather than one. If you guys don't know how to count, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and bop ba da bop bop ba da. It's just so simple, so easily repeated, but it's just not and even if I change and only start on the upbeat 1, 2, 3, 4 still not enough change, you know. So really getting into note duration and coming up with a simple rhythm that is just a little bit more interesting is really gonna blow this away. And then eventually we start adding the pitch on top of that, you know, and that'll come into, you know, sort of another lesson. But getting that simple but interesting rhythm and then making variations off of that is what's going to make it way more interesting immediately. So if you need to train that muscle in the sense of doing and then right, if that's what you need to do, 4, 4, 4, 4 of just that pop, 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 pop rhythm, that's totally fine at first, right? And then eventually moving into 4 of something more rhythmically interesting, you know, and then you'll find yourself really combining, you know, ba da 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 ba da 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 da, right? That kind of like those 16 da da da. Right, 16th notes in the beginning, kind of like a shotgun in the beginning, and then a much longer note, right? And then something that's cut off a little bit there at the end. So you're not only dipping into quarter notes and eighth notes, you know, you're able to take your longer notes, right, and maybe get a half note, right? And then some of your other notes are either eighth note triplets or even 16th notes. So something to consider, guys, that's going to make it a little bit more interesting. Just don't make it. What you don't want to do is eventually get to the point, right, when we're pushing this, to get to the point where it just sounds erratic. You know, if you have like ba ba da ba da da ba ba da 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 ba da da, but it just sounds like a wildly erratic rhythm that's just so drastically different from da 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 da. So you don't, you kind of have these borders that you want to stay inside, and also being able to move in and out, having a little bit more of an interesting, intricate rhythm is great to then contrast with something that's not. I mean, you know, one thing that happens is if you have that. Now those longer note durations sound a little bit cooler off of just the little bit more syncopated, a little bit more out there rhythms. So check that out. Let me know what you guys think.